Hi everyone, welcome to Migration to Ghana. For those who haven't watched us before, we are a platform that try to build a community for those in the diaspora to come back home to Ghana. We provide you realities and opportunities as well as human connections with others of the same mind. Today is a special edition that we have. We are actually with the guest in Ghana itself, with Reverend Albert Ocran. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me, and I am pleased to be on your show today.
Thank you for having me. So, if I can just get you to introduce yourself, what you do, who you are. I know you're a man that wears many hats. If you don't mind telling us a bit more about who you are.
That's probably the most difficult question to answer, but Jackie, for the benefit of your viewers and listeners, let me say my name is Albert Ocran. I have the honor of being a pastor at the International Central Gospel Church. In addition to being a pastor, I've written 26 books with my lovely wife, Comfort. We write together. We've done so since the year 2003. 2003 was when we wrote our first book, 10 Commandments of Success. And since then, we've written altogether about 26 books. And we feel blessed to be able to touch the lives of young people. We run the Springboard Roadshow Foundation that does roadshows, and that also does the weekly Springboard Virtual University. In the course of our work, we've interacted with young people across all the regions of Ghana, several hundreds of thousands, if I can put it modestly. Our recent core program done under the umbrella of the MasterCard Foundation in all reached 23 million young people, predominantly in Ghana and some of them in Sierra Leone and then Nigeria. So basically our lives are wrapped around investing in young people, inspiring young people, and we dedicated all our lives to building a great generation of young people capable of doing something for God and country, and if I may add, and continent. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Just what he does, 23 million just. We don't have much time, so I will be quick with the questions. Since you're a pastor, I'd like to touch upon Joseph and his story of migration, how he moved and his family, because of him, his family were better off. And there are so many other stories in the Bible where people have migrated and come back to their hometown as well. So what would you say and encourage us who want to move back and belong and integrate into the society? How would you tell us to navigate?
It's interesting to talk about Joseph, one of my favorite characters in the Bible. And I love Joseph not just because of the migration, but because of the journey of his life. Because he started with great promise and then went through a period of uncertainty. So there is a promise on your life that you will be great. And for many of us, we can relate to a certain aspiration in our childhood that we will be good, will be great. Maybe a word of prophecy, maybe dreams that you had, or your own aspirations while in school. But in the course of the journey, things can get a bit tough sometimes. In the case of Joseph, he found himself moving from one place to another. So he just didn't migrate. He moved from the comfort of his home to Potiphar's house. He prospered in that land, to be fair to him, but then ran into trouble and then went into prison. And then he prospered in the prison, and then at an appointed time, he was elevated to become Prime Minister of Egypt, and in the end, created opportunity for all his people to move into the land of Egypt. The interesting thing with Joseph is the fact that in his case, it was not a migration back home. Ultimately, it became in a different dispensation. But what his case was that he found opportunity in a different land, and as a result, opened the door for his whole family to move to that place. However, what we can pick from that is the fact that in the course of our lives, we can find opportunity in a place that is different from where we've been used to, where we've lived, where we've grown, and we must have the faith, the strength, the wisdom, maybe wisdom in particular, to be able to spot the opportunity first, seize the opportunity, and then expand the scope of the opportunity so others can come in and benefit with us. And that's the story of Joseph.
All right. I'd like to tell you as well that before the cameras went on, we were having several heated conversations.
I love them. I love heated conversations. They are nice.
Yeah, so you spoke about wisdom and about Joseph, and you also mentioned that he was not their savior, but he was kind of the helper of the people. And before the cameras went on, we spoke about sometimes the divide that people from the diaspora can naturally give because of sometimes there maybe things that are misrepresented in the way we speak. I say we because I'm from the diaspora. So in the way we speak, or sometimes the way we come across, that we're coming to be the savior of Ghana, be the savior of the land of our parents and the soil that we come from. So Joseph was hated by his brothers. He was kind of, I had the quote, and now I'm the savior. I'm come to give you guys bread. I'm come to save your lives. How do we not have hatred amongst our locals, similar to how Joseph had hatred amongst his brethren?
I would not even equate the response of Joseph's family to his premature exposure of his dreams to the disconnect that sometimes occurs between diasporans and their colleagues who are based at home. So let's start with Joseph and his brethren, and for that matter, his parents. The challenge that Joseph faced was not because he had prospered in a different land or anything. It was a typical challenge of a young person who has a glimpse of what he can become and then interprets that in a comparative nature. You know, sibling rivalry exists everywhere in the world. So when you have a dream from God that you will be great, it is your dream. For all you know, somebody else also has their dream. Now, when you interpret your dream and you say, I had a dream, and you bow down to me, it's a comparative. At the time you are sharing that dream as well, you have not even crossed halfway of the divide between your dream and your current reality. So people have a right to look at you with the eyeglasses of where you are now. And you don't look like a millionaire. You don't look like a billionaire. So when you say, I'll become a billionaire and you bow down to me, you expect the kind of reaction. So they were disappointed. They were upset. And his parents were also upset because they asked him, are you saying that your mother and I and your brothers will bow down to you? Do you understand what you are saying? In the patriarchal Jewish culture, you needed a blessing of your parents. So to say they will bow down to you was almost it was unheard of. And all these were factors. So I would blame it on a young person with great ambitions who could not understand the cultural and societal implications of interpreting his dream in a comparative way. Now, you mentioned hatred and you linked it to diasporans and you used the word locals. I would say your colleagues who live at home. When I was younger, I used to love reggae music. I still do, but not as much as when I was younger.
Reading notes? Or?
Reggae music.
Oh,
reggae music. And one of the reggae musicians sang a song and said, no matter where you come from, as long as you are a black man, you are an African. Check it out. There's a reggae song like that. And what he was simply saying is that if you're a Ghanaian, you're a Ghanaian. Whether you live here or you live there, you are a Ghanaian. So there is not even the diasporan Ghanaian and the local Ghanaian. They are all Ghanaians. If you don't open your mouth to talk, the accent will not even be different. And of course, there are people like Kofi Annan who lived there all their lives and the accent didn't change. So there are Ghanaians who refuse to hold a different passport no matter how long they live in a different country because they say, I will never hold a different country's passport. Those are personal decisions people make. But when all is said and done, let's start from the premise that a person who travels outside the country travels looking for opportunity, and it is as legitimate as the person who stays to look for opportunity. The beautiful thing about this world is that some would find their opportunities here and others will find their opportunities there. Equally, some Caucasians, Asians, Americans, Indians will find opportunity in their country, but others will come to Ghana and find far better opportunities here and not want to go back to their country because they think this is where God puts them. So for everyone listening to us, Jackie, the person must look for where would God have me be? And if you find yourself in that place, you will prosper. I am of the firm conviction that all my life belongs right here in Ghana. And anytime I travel, I can't wait to come back home because this is my home. I belong here, proudly Ghanaian, and I intend to live here all my life. When I travel out, it is either to work for holiday briefly, and I told you off air that I've never had to spend more than a month and a half in any country. It doesn't make me any better than the person who God has blessed to live and work outside. The most important thing is that if I abandon where I believe God has placed me and say, I've seen people prosper in the UK or in the US, and I go there without a clear idea of what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back with my tail between my legs and wonder, what happened? Similarly, if the person who God has placed there also says, I hear my colleagues in Ghana have bought houses and come here with no clear agenda, they would roam about and not find like the birds after Noah's Ark and not find somewhere to land and then go back. The most important word is the word there. And in this instance, it means the place where God has placed you. When you find it, he blesses the work of your hands. Pardon my Christian package that I'm wrapping my thoughts in. But for those who can't relate to that, my simple submission is that there are people who would make it here in Ghana, and God will bless them beyond their wildest dreams, who would never be able to survive in another country. And similarly, there are Ghanaians too who will do amazing stuff in another country who would never be able to find their feet here in Ghana.
So I suppose there's myself and a few others who have this burning your urge to kind of move back. Then it's kind of a message that God is saying, this is where the soles of your feet will tread, this is where you'll prosper in that sense. Whereas there's some people, they're born and bred in the UK and they have no desire to come back to Africa or leave where they're from in London. And I suppose that's where they're meant to prosper as well. Sometimes we have the need to say, everyone should come back. But as you're saying, it's not everyone that will do well.
Perfect. I like that conclusion. Not everyone can move back here. But there are people too in the UK who shouldn't be there and they know it. And they are listening to us today. Who should tell themselves that enough is enough. Listen, Jackie, it's important you're having this conversation because the quality of life, the human dignity, there are many people in the UK, and when I travel there and I see them, I'm so proud of them, living out their dream, doing great things. The same applies to the US, all over the world. I go out there and I see Ghanaians and hear about Ghanaians doing stuff, and I'm like, yes, this is it. And and they know, and we all know that this is where they belong. And they are like ambassadors. Ambassadors of a country don't live in their home country, but they represent their home country. Listen, the ambassadors of Ghana are not just the high commissioners that the president empowers. It is people of excellence in every field. When you go to work and you do your best and people look at you and they say, are you from Ghana? You're doing great work. You are an ambassador. So I love it when I see ambassadors of Ghana doing well out there, representing us with dignity and doing great stuff. But there are people also who wake up every day and ask themselves, what am I doing here? And I say this with no sense of disrespect for them. But being who I am, a pastor, I'm going to stick with scripture in my interpretation of this. So let me go to the prodigal son. Bible says that he was doing well in his father's house, ostensibly in the context in which the story was narrated. A Jewish patriarchal system, the firstborn son inherits a double portion of the inheritance. The father was rich. The father was happy with him. So the firstborn was there, then the secondborn. Let's use 2 sons, even if they were more. Let's just use 2 sons. That's what the Bible talks about. So these 2 sons were growing up in the father's house. The younger one says, you know what? Give me my portion of the inheritance. Then he goes to a far country. So he disconnects himself from where his roots were, where his future was, where he was being groomed. Granted that the senior one had more prospects, but he also had an inheritance. And he probably was designed to do well in that house. He left and went to a far country. That means separate yourself from the past. I don't want to have anything to do with where I was born. And then he goes there, and then unfortunately does not make effort at improving the quality of his life, but takes the inheritance that he has been given, and in the biblical description, he lives frivolously. So partying here, going to and there are people who live like that. Every blessed day partying here and there, until he had wasted every resource that he had. And then this is where it gets very interesting. The Bible says he was degraded to the point where he woke up one day and there was no food to eat, no work to do. Then he went to do a job looking after pigs. I won't go into the Jewish culture and pigs and how demeaning it was for a Jewish man to look after pigs. Let me leave that as every job is profitable. So he was looking after pigs. But while he was looking after the pigs, he was so hungry that he looked at the pig's food and said, I actually wouldn't mind. I have appetite for this food. That was the lowest point in his life. Then he lifts his head and asks himself, I know I may have made a radical decision to leave my home and come here, but in reality, the servants in my father's house have better food than this. So the Bible says he came to himself. Do you know what that means? For all that while, where was he? Yeah. It means that it's possible that there are people, and I say this respectfully, living in the diaspora, not like the ambassadors who are doing great stuff, but who have possibly stopped reflecting on their lives and the quality of their lives, who could possibly, like the prodigal son, come to themselves and say, what am I doing here? How many of the people who were far behind me when I was in Ghana are not having a better quality of life than I have here? I was once working in Düsseldorf in Germany, and I saw a person get out of a bus and start running. He started running, and I saw the person, I knew the person was a Ghanaian. Yeah. I knew that he was just fleeing from he probably had just landed something and he was just running away. I'm sure he would change his identity. This is the kind of person who one day must wake up and say, why sit I here till I die? So, to the extent that the prodigal son came to himself and said, you know what? Where I grew up, where I was born, where I was living my life till I migrated, there are better opportunities there. And he turned his face to go back there. And the Bible says that when he was coming back, there were questions on his mind. But he said, you know what, no matter what, that is my home, and I'll be welcome there. And the Bible says, while he was far away, his father was standing on top of the roof, looking out for him. I know it's a depiction of the love of God, but I want to also say that in the context of this conversation, if you go out there and it doesn't work for you and you want to come back home, this is your home. You are welcome. Yeah. But having said that, let me also say that the fact that somebody decides to migrate and changes their mind and comes back home does not mean that it didn't work for them. Yeah. It could also mean that they had a period, a season where they were supposed to work there. That season is completed. If you stay on there, you will start declining, or you will miss out on another blessing that is here. So there are different reasons why somebody may want to come home. They may want to come home because they finish and work there, or they've seen an even bigger opportunity there here, or they went there to educate themselves and they want to bring back the expertise to help build this country, or finally, they have laid a great foundation and they want to transport that foundation here and build a skyscraper on it. Yeah. Whichever case it is, they are welcome home.
Yeah. I think it's important what you said in terms of it's okay to change your mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Be it that whether you're returning, if you've made a mistake, or if you want to build on the experience. So sometimes people want to prove a point, say, I must stay because people told me that it wasn't, for example, people that come back, they might say people told me not to come back, so now I must prove a point. But I don't think life is about that, as you said. But on the topic of changing your mind, I'm going to quickly move on to your relationship with your wife and how well you work together.
I don't intend to change my mind about that one.
Yes, so, but that's the thing I want to talk about. What happens when, at what stage can someone say, darling, it's not working for the sake of our marriage, it was good, it's more affordable, you know, we both have the best interest of the business, it's better to work together than to get somebody from outside. They won't have the same passion as we do. But at what stage is it okay to then say, darling, either you sack yourself or you resign, but working together is no longer beneficial for us? Have you seen those things happen for the betterment of the relationship?
Let me give you perspective on this. Mm-hmm. You know, when you watch some films, they say, don't go and practice this one at home.
Yeah, because your one is rosy-ish.
I think that the fact that some couples work together in a partnership does not necessarily mean that every couple must work together. I had a friend a couple of weeks ago tell me, how do you guys do it? You know what? It wouldn't work for my husband and I. And she was very honest. She said it to me and Comfort together, that it won't work for us. And she explained why. And I understood her perfectly. Temperaments vary. Dispositions vary. Interests vary. In the case of Comfort and I, it's just God who has been gracious to us because we have a lot of shared interests. So the things that we do, it's not like she does it and I tag along, or I do it and she tags along. We both have deep respect for each other's style. We've written 26 books together. For 2 of the books, she wrote them by herself because they were books about me, and they were both released as a surprise. I have people who say, of all your books, those are the only 2 that I read. I don't get offended. Okay. It means that something about the way she writes connects with them better than the books that we write together, because the ones we write together have a more serious outlook. They have a more workman-like outlook. They focus a bit more on driving people to their goals, their aspirations. Yeah, there are stories in it here and there, illustrations in it here and there, but it's always very target-driven, But the ones she writes are more relaxing. They talk about love. They talk about the soft side of life. And there are people who love that one, and I was like, oh, how? You don't like the ones we write? But that's the beauty of life. Yeah. So I'm blessed to be able to appreciate Comfort as an authority in her own right. Mm-hmm. She's a champion in her own right, and I'm very privileged to be her husband and to get to work with her. So to the extent that I know that she has skills that are different from mine, her style is different from mine, we complement each other. There are others who are not like that, and so they will have a different approach in working together. Now, if they don't find their rhythm and say, because these people do it, or this other couple does it, or this other couple, we also can work together, and they start having tensions, and those tensions begin to boil over and translate to tensions at home, it will be important to revisit which one is the priority. And of course, the family is the greater priority than the business. And if there is tension in the business as a result of a couple working together, they need to make an important decision and look for a different way of expressing their career aspirations.
So, I was watching something that you were talking about in terms of multiple streams of income and the Bible scripture of Eden and the 4 streams. In the West, typically, we often rely on one stream, which is, you're an employee, and it's very comfortable. If you're ill, there's a safety net there. But now our generation is more so, trying to build the hustle and the entrepreneur life and balancing it out with, you know, the 9 to 5. But in Ghana, I see that many people have multiple streams, especially within COVID. One business could be affected, but some people have land that they're selling or something else that's a backup for them. How important, obviously it's very important in these times, but how manageable and how do people navigate through that in here? And for example, I give myself an example, I want to come, but have a 9 to 5 as a safety net here and then build on my business. So when the business is moving up, then I'll maybe quit the regular job. But what's the advice you'd give and the pitfalls that you've seen people that want to juggle too many things? Or is too many things okay?
Let me start from the very beginnings. So for many people, they are products of an educational system that was designed not with the COVID-19 and the current realities in mind. And so the typical education system was almost typically designed to let one grow through it and then get a job and then live your life. If I had to redo it from scratch, I would make entrepreneurship compulsory and start it from probably nursery or class 1. And when I see that people are like, entrepreneurship in class 1, and I said yes, because I won't teach it like entrepreneurship. I'll teach it with stories and illustrations that a class 1 person can appreciate. There are things I would definitely start from class 1, and there are a number of them I'm very clear about. 1 is entrepreneurship, 2 is talent discovery and development, and 3 is investment. I've thought about it several times in my mind how to teach a child about investment. When I was in class 4, I was first in class, and my mom said to me, let's go to Kingsway store. Everybody loved Kingsway then. Today, Kingsway is defunct, but Kingsway was the place to go. Went to Kingsway store, and she said to me, choose any shoe you like, and I'll buy it for you as your reward for being first. And then I saw an ankle-high brown shoe. It was beautiful. And then I said, I like that one. And the price tag in those days, old currency was 39 cedis, 99 pesos. I don't know how much it translates, but. And so I said, I like that one. And she said, great, you can have it. Then I stretched out my hand to take the shoe, and she said, by the way, a building, and she mentioned an estate in Takoradi that I was very familiar with. She said, a building there cost this amount of money. And so if you sacrificed the cost of a shoe, and you did that over a period of time, you would actually own a house. The moment she said that, I said, it's okay. Put the cost of the shoe in my bank account. And that was the end of it. Till today, whenever I see a brown shoe, interestingly, I'm wearing a brown shoe today. Whenever I see a brown shoe, I remember that shoe. I remember it. And this was a simple lesson in investment. So back to your question, you're asking about how do people generate multiple streams of income? If our education system had taught people about talent, the person will understand that, listen, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a writer. I'm a doctor, but I'm also a broadcaster. So in our teenpreneurship conference, one of the things that we teach young people is tell me 3 things that you can do, not 1. Don't even tell me what you want to become in future. Tell me 3 things you can do. And once we unlock their minds and take off the shackles of doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, architect, and help them to appreciate that, listen, I can be a pilot, a broadcaster, and an online trader. I can be a graphic designer, a doctor, and an artist. Then suddenly they find out that, you know what, I don't have to choose between doctor and artist. I can be a doctor and still draw. So what we need to do is to break those shackles that hold us up in one box and say, this is what you want to be. So you actually grew up with all the 3 streams in your mind. Additionally, even if you have been, let me use the word, a prisoner of the system and developed only 1 stream, if for nothing, COVID has taught us that the stream that you rely on so much can dry up quickly. So if your company tells you that they can only afford to pay you half of your salary pre-COVID, You can't go to your children's school and tell the head teacher that you pay half of the school fees pre-COVID. What do you do? But if you had another stream, a passive stream, and when we talk about multiple streams, it's not always that it's competing with it mustn't compete with your 9 to 5 main job. It must be something that you can do without being unfaithful in your main job. And there are several things. I always say that the first one that is non-negotiable is an investment. An investment is actually a job. If you put away 10% of your income in anything that earns interest, what happens is that while you are working, your income is also working for you on the side. And that's a beautiful thing. And if you found out something else you could do, there are people who are great editors. And today, courtesy of online services, you can edit a book for a client you've never seen before, and you will never meet them, and they will still pay you for your services. And you could literally do that in your spare time without disturbing your 9 to 5 hustle. There are several things an individual can do. And in choosing what to do, look at what do you love? What are you interested in? What is it that brings you fulfillment? What is it that you can navigate your way around that others struggle to do? And once you get into those conversations, you will definitely find something that works for you and develop it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I say that to my daughter. I always say to her, and what else do you want to be? Because sometimes in school, they ask us, what do you want to be? And we stop at 1. Like, oh, I want to be a doctor, and that's it.
3, minimum.
3, I like that. 3 is the minimum. So you touched upon kind of integrity in terms of, not compromising your 9 to 5 to compensate for your other times. So everywhere in the world we have different moral compasses and codes of conduct that we adhere to. Maybe in the UK you don't park somewhere that's wrong because there are cameras there. So the law kind of restricts you from your own personal convictions. Whereas in Ghana it's more relaxed, so you have to rely on yourself and that intrinsic values that you hold. So just in here, what's the advice you'd give regarding integrity that people must remember? And also, what are the things that we kind of, from the West, that we kind of overly exaggerate to be negative, where maybe it's just a different cultural lifestyle? So certain traditions that we do here, it might be seen, we portray it as negative, so we call it bribes, but maybe it's actually not a bribe, it's a tip. We might say something else is fraud, and it's not a fraud here because the laws do not restrict it to be a fraud. Marijuana is illegal in the UK, but it's legal in Amsterdam. So you can't hold the same standing in those things. So what's the things that, 1, we should have high integrity for, and then 2, say you UK people, sometimes when you come, you have this moral kind of righteousness about ourselves that we don't need to have when we come back.
Let me answer this question differently. Let me start from the fact that as a pastor and a Christian, I'll start from the Bible as the compass. So whether I'm in Ghana or UK, what must guide my life is what God, the standard God has set for me. So because the law that man has made will never be enough to guide my life. Let me give you an example. So if my biblical ethical foundation does not allow me to take alcohol, the law will tell you not to drink and drive, but I wouldn't drink at all. So it is not what the laws say alone that guides me. The supreme law that guides my life is my desire to be more and more like Christ. The beautiful thing about that is that it's a journey. So I try harder every time by the grace of God. The Bible talks about we all with open face beholding us in a glass, the glory of God, and being transformed into that same image from glory to glory. So I tell myself as a Christian, I don't even want to say as a pastor, as a Christian, if I am better this year than I was last year, then God's word is working in my life. I look at myself and say, how much of what I hear in preaching every Sunday is reflecting in my work? Am I fair to those I work with? Am I a better leader, a better employer? If I am, then I say, okay, at least I'm growing in the way I handle people. And that is the first principle that guides my life. The second thing I would like to say in response to what you said is that, again, interestingly, I was talking to a friend in the US who said he was dealing with someone we both look up to who is here in Ghana, who had come to the US. And there was a road that everyone was driving on because the alternative was a very long route, but in principle, that shortcut route was not permitted. It's like when they have, there's it's an example, but this was not the case, but like an example, when you have more than 2 passengers in your car, on the highway, there's a lane reserved for you. It's kind of to encourage carpooling. So if you have more than 2 passengers in a car, in some states, there is a reserved lane in the traffic for you that you can drive on. Now, on that lane, there are cameras, all right, but if you have people sometimes put pillows with people pretending that they are people sleeping in the car and drive on that lane. He says he was going to drive on the shortcut everybody was going on. And this person who was in Ghana said, no, you can't do that. He said, but there's no policeman there, there's no cameras there. He said, you know what? It's not about the policemen or about the cameras. It's about what is right. He says, I couldn't believe that he made us go round until we got there. So ethics and morality is not a national, it's not a Ghanaian thing or a UK thing or a US thing. It's a personal thing. And that's the bigger lesson I want us to carry away from here, because you will find that there are people who are in the UK, Ghanaians who are in the UK, who shoplift. Yeah. And that is wrong. I'm not saying everybody does, but there are people who do it. And when I traveled, I hear some Ghanaians express their disappointment at some of our colleagues who do that. So when all is said and done, it's not a case of Ghanaians in a particular jurisdiction being more righteous, more holy, or more law-abiding than others. However, having said that, it is interesting how people respond when the laws are strongly policed, if I may use that word. So, for instance, one of the things that I struggle to understand is, and there's a cultural side and then there's also the policing side. When you go to Benin, I won't even talk about UK, to Benin, to Burkina Faso, to Togo, motor riders, when they get to the traffic light, stop. In fact, if you go to Tamale in Ghana, the northern Ghana, where the riding is a part of their lives before we adopted it here in Accra, all riders, when they get to the traffic light, they stop. Come to Accra, and the motor rider who gets to the traffic light assumes that he, or for that matter, she, is exempt from the rules of traffic, and then they jump the lights. They jump the lights because, one, either there's nobody there, or two, the person can't catch them. So they've ridden off. But go to the UK. The systems are such that if you jumped, the ticket will come to your house. So the same person goes to that country and they abide by the rules. So it is that part that is food for thought, that when laws are enforced and policed, people behave themselves. In fact, even right here in Ghana, in Accra, if you went to a military installation and they said, turn down your highlights, or this is the speed limit, people enforce it or they respect it. So there's something about policing that makes people comply. And it's something we can explore further, and definitely it's something that we can adopt in our part of the world.
Let's touch upon, not to make it biblically again, but your gift will make room for you. So it's not just with your talents as well. Sometimes it could be your financial gifts. Particularly when you move here, you try to build networks, and it's not just about somebody always giving to you, but also what you can give to them. So what are the things we have to consider when again, maybe integrity comes into play, but being that arm that you stretch for people that you're trying to make connections with. So naturally, if I was in the UK or America, I'd maybe have a drink with someone, go out to eat, and build relationships there. I suppose that works the same here as well. But particularly with those who want to do business, it's much easier to, I know more millionaires in the UK, in Ghana than I do anywhere else in the world, and I spent more time in the UK. So, but with that being said, you still would have to work in different formats and styles. So what do we have to bear in mind when we're in this new sphere of business building, business relationship building in Ghana, that we then say, actually, these are the things that it's sensible to do, because if you were in the corridors of power in the UK, you'd be doing it there too. But maybe because you don't have that exposure in the UK, you don't realise that those are the things you need to do. But in Ghana, you have the ability to maybe meet with a president one day. You have close proximity to those people. So what are the things that we should bear in mind when we're coming and networking with people on a business platform?
Let's start with what you were doing while you were away. So why would coming back home be such a difficult thing if you had kept in touch with home? So let's start with when people travel. I wish I could say there are two kinds of diasporans, but let me not say that. But if you insist, I could say that for your benefit, for the purpose of illustration. There are those who leave knowing that they would come back one day. And so they keep their relationships. That's the best approach. There are some who, at the point of leaving, look at how, in quotes, difficult things are, or how the perception that what on earth would I ever have to come here for? And so shut the door on everything that they knew here and go out there and never keep in touch with anyone. Now, when you want to come back with that kind of background, you find yourself expecting people that you have been disconnected from for several years, pandering to you and jumping because you are coming back, and just because you're coming back from a different country. It doesn't work that way. So I would say that for everyone who travels out there, keep in touch with your colleagues here. I happen to have gone through the old educational system that had secondary school, not senior high school. And I'm saying this not to say one is better than the other. But in my secondary school socialization, I had 120 classmates, went to Form 1 with them, with all the hassle that we went through in Form 1 in those days, the bullying and so on. And so we grew up with a shared identity. We are hustling together. Then we got to Form 3. Now we could walk around on campus without being beaten. And then we went through all those rites of passage, confirmation, then we became senior boys, and then we were now in Form 4, then we went to Form 5, now we are the big boys around, wrote O-level, went home, came back as sixth formers, and did 2 more years with a different uniform. All those simple rites of passage created a sense of community. And in all my life, I can tell you without any shadow of doubt that the strongest network in my life is my old school network. Not the broad old school network for the whole, no. It is those who are my classmates. And it's such a strong network because in that same network you will find the politician, you will find the lawyer, you will find the doctor. And several times when people have a challenge, I want to buy land, this person will say, talk to this person, go here. I have a medical condition, this person will say, check your prostate, check this, check that. And free consultation on the WhatsApp platform. And the value, the savings you make because you have top professionals who are glad to help you just because you are their classmates. It's priceless. So I will come back to the same point and say, when we talk about networks, let's not reduce it to coming to a town where you know nobody and thinking that you can pay your way around and get and build some connections. I think that if you oiled the network that you have while you are away, it's easy to walk back in and reconnect with them once again. Even if you have never lived here and you were born there, there's nothing wrong with it. The network you have created there can be leveraged because somebody knows somebody. And especially if it is being done on merit. You are not asking for a favor because you are disqualified, but you want the rules to be bent. You are qualified. You are asking for somebody to give you a hearing. You will find opportunity if you have kept your networks well oiled. So I would say that the people that God brings into your life are a priceless asset. I personally believe that in life you have financial equity, you have reputational equity, and then you have relational equity. And many people play down relational equity, but when you talk about the gift opening the door for you, one of the greatest gifts in your life are the relationships God gave you. We are sitting here because of relationship, and that's what it's all about.
Yes, that's true. We're going to ask 2 questions and then ask him about his books and what he's doing as well. So on the topic of family now, you're saying that your wife and yourself, I suppose everybody has different parenting styles as well. In particular for those, I haven't been raised in Ghana, so I would have maybe a different style that I would naturally, I have my own fears in the UK with this new age things that I'm trying to protect my daughter from. But then likewise in Ghana, there are ignorances that I won't be able to protect her from as well. So what are the things you would advise us when navigating through this new age in Ghana, raising your children, particularly with husband and wife that are trying to, those that want to model coddle their kids, and those that want to give their kids the freedom of going to school by themselves and walking home like you said you did many years ago, rather than saying, oh, I want them to be driven home. So balancing the fear that some have and balancing the overprotective nature that others have, and the realities in Ghana that we wouldn't have the exposure to because we weren't raised here.
If I understand your question right, I think that parenting is a very important responsibility for every couple that is blessed to have children, whether adopted or biological. Parenting is a very important responsibility and God-given assignment. Having said that, I must say that the challenges of parenting become more and more interesting and difficult as time goes on. I'm sure that if you asked my generation of parents, they will say that the challenge of raising a child in my time when I was a child were different from the challenge of raising a child in the time when my mother was a child. But I can say emphatically that the challenges I have in raising my children are probably steeper than those of my parents. But then somebody will say that even now it is worse because the biggest difficulty that I still am trying to wrap my mind around is the fact that some of the decisions that your child will make are influenced by authorities that are outside your scope. And a counselor in a school can ask your child to do something that you do not approve of, and by the time you are aware, the child has done it. Those are very difficult and challenging situations. And so the parent of today has to navigate very steep, very challenging issues that maybe were not that like that in our time. What is the solution? I wouldn't say I have all the answers. I think that the biggest legacy that a parent must leave for their child is the legacy of their own example. I host a program called Time with Pastor Table where I hang out with Pastor Table. I have the blessing of asking him very difficult questions every week, and it's one of the topics we explored recently, and I'll borrow his answer and give it to you for very good reason. I asked him about traditions and how important they are in parenting, and his answer was that traditions are things that you don't see any value in, but they pack a lot into simple moments. So for instance, there are traditions that we have, like on a typical weekend or as a family, when we are at the table, anytime we are at the table, no phones. Everybody turns off their phone or puts their phone away. It's a tradition. It may not mean anything, but it's just to say that the time when we have together, no one can take calls, no one can look at their text messages. It's just a simple way of saying that, listen, give me your undivided attention while we are at table. I suspect that even though we will kick against it, all of us will kick against it, and Comfort is the policewoman for that. But you would find that I won't be surprised that the children will grow up, have their own families, and replicate the same tradition. So if our tradition is that on weekends we'll typically have devotion and after that have a kinky party. You find out all the children are doing it. If 31st night everybody wears white, they will do the same. So traditions allow us to aggregate around simple ideas and say, this is how we do our things. And then it's passed on from one generation to another. So for every parent who's trying to navigate this role of raising children and asking themselves, Charlie, it's not easy. I think that it starts with what example are we ourselves? If I respect comfort, the children learn to respect themselves and respect their parents and respect their spouses because they've seen it and they've come to understand that they would never see daddy insulting mommy, never, or dishonoring her in their presence. So they lock it in their minds that a couple must not disrespect each other. That's what I hope that we can do in the face of very steep odds. And of course, as Christian parents, opening them up to God's word and then praying for and with them could also help. But having said that, you do your best and then God is your helper.
Okay, my last question before we move on to your personal attributes is I was watching an interview and I heard someone else say the same thing. I often find that before Ghanaians were quite modest when we compare to our counterparts, Nigerians, where they're quite proud and overtly boastful. You'd find that people say, oh, Ghanaians are more humble, they're quieter, which is a stereotype. But you alluded to the fact that I think 1970s when there was a particular government where they had to kind of be a bit more modest with their successes and their findings, obviously because of whatever might have been taken away from them, so they naturally became that way. So if you look at us in 20 years' time, what are the things that we would then have to navigate and become again? So before we had to, in the 70s we had to be modest, what will we have to be for 20 years' time for us to push Ghana together?
Let me start by reacting to your description of my Nigerian friends. I have Nigerian blood, a bit of Nigerian blood. Well, let me just say that I'm very closely connected to my Nigerian friends. So I find them very assertive. That's the word, assertive. They are confident and they are very strong. They know what they believe in, and they are very confident in expressing their views. I think it's something that we can learn from them in our part of the world as Ghanaians, because I sometimes find that culturally we are socialized to keep quiet. A child should keep quiet. It has merit. It teaches us respect for the elderly, but it makes us also sometimes too docile, even in our professional lives. So if you found two people, one from Ghana, one from Nigeria, and the person is typically more assertive, you can be technically better than the person, but once the person is able to articulate what they bring to the table, they could beat you in the interview, and it wouldn't be their fault. So there are aspects of our cultural orientation that are very popular in our part of the world. A parent could, in those days, advise you that when you go to the office, listen, don't talk. When they talk, don't talk. And it's supposed to be good advice. But how can you be promoted in life when you don't talk? So these are things that we've grown up around thinking that they are acceptable norms, but that have robbed us of that ability to articulate what you bring to the table and to challenge the status quo and to say we can build a greater nation, we can build a better world, I have a better solution. So going forward, I'm glad that our generation, the next generation of young people is a bit more inquisitive, and they're asking why, but why? For a parent raised in my generation, it's very annoying when children keep asking, but why? Because you're like, we used to say things like, obey before complain, keep quiet and do it. But you are learning to say, because, and then they ask you, and after you give the answer, they say, I don't want to, but why? I must say it's very annoying, but you still have to keep explaining. You unlearn some things, and then you relearn some things because you find out that it will raise a more confident generation of young people. It's a very difficult skill if you were not socialized in a generation that allows questions, but parents should accept that that is the only way the children can also question when the wrong thing is being perpetuated on them. In terms of what I mentioned in the other interview about the 70s and so on, I was alluding to the fact that when people come out of a particular experience, it informs their orientation and their outlook on life. So for instance, in a particular period in the history of Ghana, during the revolutionary period, the 79, when I was in Form 1 and so on, many people were held accountable for being prosperous. So the typical person who was in trouble at that time was somebody who had more than one car, just prosperity was an offense in itself, and because of the heady nature of those conversations, there was no need to even prove that you were guilty, because it was almost like us and them, the masses versus those who had prospered. Now, at that time, it was fanciful and there was a lot of noise, but the undercurrents or the aftermath, the after effect in the eyes of an impressionable young person was that it was an offense to be prosperous, or an offense for it to be known that you had prospered. And I was saying that we need to unlearn those perceptions and relearn a new ideal that there's nothing wrong with working hard and doing well and becoming an example for others. And I still stand by that any day, any time, any week, any year, that young people must be encouraged to work hard, to prosper, to progress, and become role models for those coming after them. They can build a prosperous society.
So in 60 seconds, two things. For Ghana in 20 years, what do we need to do to prepare for it today? And also, what's new for you that we can watch out for on our global platform?
The first thing I'd like to say is that Ghana is a beautiful country. I love this country. I am unhappy about a number of things. I wish we could grow faster. I wish we could seize our moment faster. But I wouldn't give up Ghana for any other place in the world. I love this country, and I'm very optimistic that as we keep building, as we keep making progress, when a tree is growing, it doesn't make noise. But I know that the Ghana of today is better than the Ghana of 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But I want us to grow faster and to plant our footprint in the sands of time. And so 10 years from now, I look forward to a Ghana that is more prosperous, creating many more successful role models. And then for my life, I trust that I'll be a part of the key drivers of this new Ghana, and that I would leverage the power of technology and new media.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope you all enjoyed the session. One thing that I took from it is that if it's for you to come back home, do come back home. If you have that urge in you, definitely come. Do watch the rest of our videos as well to see how you can best engage with it, and get in contact as well if you want to become part of our networks. Thank you.